are all geared and set for an interesting conversation on change adoption in a rapidly evolving marketplace. Today with me, I have our panels from varied industries. They work very closely with people and processes. So I am super excited to hear from them their take on change and how we can sustain productivity and the efficiency we've seen in the past few months. Organizations have been forced to create more visible workplaces, create a more place. They've been forced to be more efficient at a time when teams are remote. So it's going to be interesting to hear the take from our panelists on how we can sustain this efficiency, productivity, and agility. I know Brigitte and Ken do not think agile is a buzzword we must reconsider. So if we had a drinking game, I think we should have a shot every time anyone says agile. Brigitte, if we had a drinking game, what's the buzzword that you dislike the most?
It would probably be agile. That would be the buzzword if we were picking a word we didn't want to hear, that's the one I'd have to pick.
Another pandemic created buzzword that I dislike is pivot. Everybody is talking about, we need to pivot. Ken, what is a buzzword we must include in our drinking game?
Oh, well, I definitely agree with that one, right? But it's been around longer than COVID, but it's almost been a disease in and of itself, right? People claiming pivot as a badge of honor.
Nick, any buzzword?
Yeah, you know what's funny, that one I probably would have used until you maybe start thinking of it, is disruption or disrupting. That's another, I guess, these are, I guess, maybe cliches to some degree, but all cliches have some relevance. So I'll just try to avoid that one to prevent everybody from having to take shots.
Disruption, and also, since I'm from the data and analytics space, there's always the word digital transformation, and it's just overused, I think. Robert, do you want to add to our buzzword drinking game?
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be scale. If we're going to do something to scale.
Yes. Perfect. Yes, I agree with all of you, and I don't like buzzwords. So all these buzzwords were on my list. So guys, anytime any of my panel uses these buzzwords, feel free to have a shot. And I hope it's happy hour wherever you are. And before I introduce once again our panel, I want to thank our partners. Big thanks going out to Pandera Systems, data and analytics technology management consultancy firm, and also Tech and Beer, one of the coolest and most fun tech communities in the United States. So since it's a Tech and Beer event, and every community connect, I bring a beer that I like, or a beer I've been enjoying. So this time it's a Dogfish Head Ale House's sour called Sequence. If you guys like sour, I think you will appreciate this. It's very citrusy, very tart, lime and sea salt. So I think for summer, it's yummy. I like it. So if you find that in a store, I think you should also check it out. So Brigitte, what do you have for happy hour today?
So I'm Atlanta-based, just like Cox, and green screen won't really let me show it very well, but Monday Night Brewery, which is local to Atlanta, has put out its own line of hard seltzer. So today is mango and guava.
Oh, yummy. I love guava.
Very summery.
Yeah, it's very summery. Actually, guava and mango is something I would happily drink through the year. Ken, do you have something for happy hour today?
I do. So, I'm in San Francisco, and, the eternal wisdom of, Mark Twain, right? The coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. I'm having a Guinness, right? To make sure that I can survive this frigid summer of San Francisco.
I appreciate you joining in the spirit of Tech and Beer and starting happy hour before 5 p.m., which is so cool. And I guess that's what pandemic and the remote working lifestyle has brought us to. And Nick, do you have something with you?
Yeah, so I'm going to be the outlier of the group, and I don't know if you guys are going to kick me off the panel. I apologize in advance, but I actually just made it my first full year anniversary of not having alcohol consumption. So I'm going with the bubbly flavored seltzer water, which I've been drinking like it's been going out of style ever since I went with this hiatus. By the way, it started out as a 1 month drinking hiatus when I went on a family trip. I was like, I'm going to detox. This was August of last year. And then I got back and I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. I feel pretty good. I'm going to try to make it through the end of this year, which was 2019. And then 2020 came and it was, a couple months to hit it for a year. I was like, all right, I'll try to make it a full year. And then the COVID pandemic happened and my wife was pregnant. So it actually helped me sort of hit that last stretch by there was less temptations, less nights at the bar and the happy hours and things of that nature. So cheers for everybody.
That's amazing. 4 years.
That's
so cool. I wish, I could embrace a healthy lifestyle like that.
Yeah, well, they do say it takes, I think, a month to create a new habit, and it definitely took it for me because I was the farthest thing from not drinking heading into that vacation.
And also, I've heard from, my friends saying, post-pandemic, their alcohol consumption also has reduced because, you don't really meet your friends, you're not going out and you're not having the late nights. So I think, to all the people on our attendees, if you've ever considered taking a break from alcohol, I think this is the perfect time and you can get inspired by Nick.
Thank you.
So Robert, do you have something on happy hour for us?
Well, like Nick, I am without right now, but I will say that my last drink was probably about an hour ago when I ran out. So I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. I am without a drink though. But so Nick and I are brothers in arms in drinking water today.
Sure.
Got to stay clear for the conversation.
Yes, we are going to be. The videos. This webinar is going to be recorded and replayed, so you have to say smart things, guys.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
All right, so we all know what kind of drinks you guys like, where you're from, but we'd like to hear from each of you, the organization you represent and what you do. I'd like to start off with Brigitte. She works closely with People Analytics. She is People Analytics Manager at Cox Enterprises. So Brigitte, could you introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, thank you for the title, so I'll skip that. Cox Enterprises, if you are not familiar with it, is a privately held conglomerate of telecommunications and automotive businesses based in Atlanta, Georgia. I am the leader of our People Analytics group. I work closely with our reporting team to ensure that our analytics needs are met, concentrating on employee experience, talent acquisition, and talent management and diversity, especially in this time. We're really concerned with understanding the employee experience. There have been new challenges around the disruption, in case anybody needs to grab a beverage, and making sure that the new normal is a healthy normal. So I'm happy to join the talk today. My background is in industrial organizational psychology, which is a mouthful that just means work psychology. So marrying the science and the data is my passion.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing from you about how workplaces have changed and how workplaces can be more productive at a time like this. Nick, to all those joining, Nick is co-founder and president at College Hunks Hauling Junk. He is a leader of sorts and a big inspiration for businesses in Tampa, Florida. So Nick, please introduce yourself to us and tell us about College Hunks Hauling Junk.
Sure. So thanks for having me on. Started College Hunks Hauling Junk when I was in college, hence the name. It was a buddy and I with a beat up cargo van and some computer printout flyers. Today we have over 150 franchise owners around the country. We provide local moving services as well as junk hauling services to people who are moving or getting rid of things. I always tell the story in the early days when we first started, we had the 800 number on the back of our truck routed to our cell phone, and people would call the 800 number to complain about driving, and I'd be in the driver's seat answering the phone, apologizing, letting them know we don't condone that type of driving in our company. We'll tell those guys to be safer on the road. Probably fired ourselves at least 3 or 4 times that first summer, and knew if we were going to ever have another truck, let alone another location, we needed to start creating systems and processes. And Robert, I think this was your buzzword, in order to scale the business. And so everybody's got your shots. Go ahead and take one on that. But today we really pride ourselves on being a purpose-driven, values-based organization. It's more than just about hauling people's stuff and moving people's furniture, but making a positive impact with our franchise owners, our team members, and ultimately our clients. And then last thing I'll mention is we created an acronym for HUNKS. It stands for Honest, Uniformed, Nice, Knowledgeable Service. That's a way we were able to make a more inclusive, broader definition that was more than just the physical definition that people typically think of.
Very interesting. Thanks for joining us, Nick. So we also have with us Ken Kruska. He is CEO at SnapCheck. So welcome, Ken. Please share a little bit about yourself and SnapCheck.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Ken Kruska, founder and CEO at SnapCheck. We are on a mission to eliminate paper checks. Let me see how many of these I can hit. Right, help businesses embrace this digital transformation to pivot their back offices.
No, please don't
disrupt legacy systems at scale in order to enable better payment mechanisms.
Yeah, pretty sure few of our attendees are already all buzzy right now, thanks to Ken. Thanks, Ken, for joining us. Robert, so Robert Johnson is Director of DevOps and Managed Services at Pandera. Welcome, Rob.
Well, thank you.
What you do at Pandera.
Yeah, so I've been an industry veteran for about 20-something years. At Pandera, we started off as a business intelligence consulting agency. We're now really an innovation firm where we take customers and help them with their digital transformation.
Of course.
But in all seriousness, what my team does is we take care of customers' cloud modernization needs, help them put workloads in the cloud, maintain them, and just make sure that their services are rock solid. So that's what we do.
Mm-hmm. All right. So my first question, I'd like to start with you, Nick. In your organization, how do you guys communicate? Has there been a change due to the pandemic? How are you communicating within teams, within your customers?
Yes, so I'll be the first to admit, when the pandemic hit, I wanted to crawl under my bed and sort of put a sheet over my head, because we were on this trajectory where the business was growing at 30-40% year over year. And then all of a sudden, this sort of unexpected, truly black swan event happened that nobody really sort of could have predicted. And then, of course, there was a health scare component to it as well. And so all the fear and uncertainty and doubt kind of crept into my head. And once I was able to get past that, which I realized that as a leader, I had to do very quickly, leaning through and leading into the situation to communicate to our franchise owners, to our team members, sort of A, the reality of the situation, and then B, sort of our vision on how we're going to get through it. We went full remote immediately, which was tough to do because we had about 150 call center agents in our Tampa call center headquarters, but thankfully we had already had the technology put in place because of sort of hurricane redundancy and things of that nature. But there's a quote from Warren Buffett that I think was really relevant, and I sometimes butcher it, so forgive me if I do, but he says, you see who's been swimming naked when the tide goes out. And I think that had a lot of relevance to our business, because we had always been so purpose-driven and values-based and culture-focused that when all of a sudden sort of was like we had to all go remote, we had to start doing Zoom conferences, we had to start doing calls, things were very different. We didn't have the in-person experience that we were all accustomed to. I think it allowed everybody to really sort of rally to the occasion and step up to the challenge and say, yes, we're going to kind of get through this together. And even through having to make some difficult decisions like laying certain folks off or having to furlough certain team members, which obviously nobody wants to do or likes to do, but it was in the sort of interest of brand preservation at the time, I think allowed us to get through it. So proactive communication, of course, we all adopted and adapted to Zoom meetings very quickly. We were accustomed to doing a daily huddle in person every morning at 11:11, a stand-up daily huddle, and we started doing that obviously with Zoom, and we've kind of inserted kind of little creative ways to make them fun and intriguing. There's talk with an accent day, there's bring a +1 to huddle day, there's have a childhood picture in your background day. So just different things to sort of keep the fun, vibrant culture that we were accustomed to sort of pre-COVID to continue on through the communication post-COVID.
I love that you guys have fun ways to spruce up these Zoom meetings and not just, make it repetitive and increase Zoom fatigue by all these fun put your childhood pictures, bring your better half. That's really cool. So Ken, how have you guys been communicating within teams and with your customers and potential clients?
Yeah, so I think like everyone, we've gone remote, right? And moving into this distributed remote mentality is a change. Right? And one aspect, right, dealing with customers has gotten infinitely easier because now everyone is just used to this, right? Don't have to fly somewhere. You don't have to jump into a car to go and meet with them in person. Everyone is readily available and has adapted to these kind of quick Zoom or Hangouts meetings, which has been really cool. From a kind of internal perspective, we're kind of small, nimble. I'll throw out agile into this workforce, and so we're trying to figure out how do we keep that alive, right? How do we keep the communication, the informal communication that happens alive without, inundating people with extraneous information, right? We do use, Hangouts, we do use Slack, we do use, the tools, but I don't want people sitting there watching Slack feeds the whole time, right? And that's something we're just trying to balance right now.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you guys are working at sprucing up these meetings, because I hear from some of my team also that we're having so many internal meetings and we're always on like video call, and how do we make that so much more better, still have that sort of personal touch and keep talking to teams. Before I move on to my other panels with this question, to my attendees, we have a poll going out right now on remote work productivity. The question is, do you find that working remote allows you to be more productive or less productive? So please let us know what you think. I'd like to move to Brigitte. So Brigitte is sort of an expert in this, in people and productivity. And how are you guys communicating? And how do you think other organizations should be communicating better in this climate?
Yeah, I want to say that my organization is doing fairly similar things, trying to balance the need for contact with the need to still be productive. Where I'll add maybe one or two additional points is the need for prioritization and for especially understanding that the organization's mission hasn't changed is very important. And we had a lot of leaders who intuited this and stepped forward to ramp up their communications, whether it was videos, all department calls on Zoom, which is something we would never have done. An unscheduled department call would have been bad news. And in this case, it was just a touch base so that people could hear what our priorities were and how we were adjusting, which in times of transition, that role clarity can just be amazing in reducing stress. The what we haven't solved for is the hallway synergy yet. At least in my group, we were half remote, half in person. And so some of our team isn't struggling at all. This is like old hat for them. But some of the rest of us, a lot of our client management skills involved being able to run into people in the cafeteria, in the hallway. You got your news about what the rest of the department might be up to, so you could figure out how to leverage what other people were working on in your own work and make those connections that are so valuable. I won't say that we have a solution for that, but that's, I'll leave that maybe to the panel if it comes up again. Be interested to hear what y'all are doing to maintain your synergy.
Rob, do you have anything to add to that on how you guys are communicating? How do you think you could communicate better with stakeholders, with your clients at a time like this?
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, it's a matter about, it's not really a technology. It's really about, as everybody else has said here, it's about setting goals and boundaries and making sure that the communication that we're having has intent and that we get to it, that we don't cross boundaries that are easy to cross when the lines are blurred about, you know, my office is right there, but my bed is right there. And so that boundary is really shaded and hard to kind of create. It helps with the signal versus noise as well. You got to be able to kind of keep the signal high and the noise low. And so it's really just about, as Nick, I think, mentioned earlier, about having really good processes in place and making sure that those things continue to follow suit. That being said, you know, Brigitte makes a great point about some ad hoc synergy. And I think for Pandera's sake, we loved being together. We have a great time together. And, you know, we miss that. We very much, I think there isn't a week that goes by during this where one of our team members says, you know, I just really miss being with you, you know, and having our lunches together and all of that. And so that we're eager to get that time back and find that out. But when it comes to efficiency and communication, to me, it's just about boundaries and goals.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And I agree with you because Rob and I, we belong to the same organization, and, you know, our organization is made up of young moms and dads, and, you know, we're very, you know, the teams are very supportive about balancing, you know, your responsibilities at home and at work. And that's really interesting. And, you know, I've heard nightmares from people about how they just can't leave their desk, and even if they don't pick their call, it's like pick their phone, it's such a big deal. I hope, you know, more organizations are more supportive of, you know, life balance right now. So Brigitte, anything you want to add on like work psychology here, about how we can create these resilient and keep the workforce productive in spite of being remote right now?
Boundaries is a good key, and breaks. Some of us need cues to take breaks. Some of us have the sort of the habit that will allow us to take a step away from our desk. But if our coworkers used to be, it was time to go lunch, or refresh our coffee so we could chat with someone in the break room, then mindfully taking breaks so you're not exhausted by the end of the day and you don't burn out, especially since our resources are challenged by the constant societal pressure of the changes taking place and the stress in our environments. Personal resiliency requires resources, and you refresh those resources by taking breaks. The other thing can just be some really basic emotional resilience tactics. So if you guys want to like dive into meditation, it sounds a little new agey, but the science backs it. If you want to take a step back and when you're stressed, engaged in some of like cognitive reframing, where you think about what it is that's challenging you and try and find a better way to paint that picture for yourself. You know, your colleagues driving you up a wall, but their intentions are probably good and you probably do have some shared goals if you can take a step back. So a lot of that emotional resiliency and the self-management tactics that help for conflict resolution are really good for creating resources in this stressful environment.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask Ken, since he works with software development teams. Anything you'd like to add about how to keep software development productivity high?
Yeah, so thanks. I think one thing we were talking about this a couple days ago, right? Is just recognizing that this environment is really good for supporting certain types of job roles and really bad at supporting other types of job roles, right? And so there are some places where you need extra crutches, some where you don't. I mean, to specifically address the software development side of things. I mean, this is like nirvana, right, for software development, right? As long as you have enough forethought to kind of spec things out, set a goal, right, and especially senior software people, right? This is perfect, right? They get freedom to go and create stuff that they want within their tech stack, but also the concentration that they need in order to hold 5 different things in their head at the exact same time. So, what we've seen is that if you can get yourself out ahead in terms of like project management, then you can really tap into that power. On the flip side of it, right, anything that requires collaboration, real time, I guess, out of the box thinking, lateral thinking, is just, I mean, it's nearly impossible, right? Because you can't even get 2 people talking at the same time over Zoom. So working together to bounce ideas off of each other, interrupt someone else's sentence, take it in a different direction, gets really, really complicated. And so we just kind of seeing both of those, right? Is there are good things you can leverage, and there are bad things. And I think kind of going forward as we come out of COVID, there's going to be some really good lessons learned for how to better organize teams, and cross-functional teams, so that you can leverage in-person strengths of environment versus remote strengths, and providing a lot more flexibility and an adaptive working style in order to get the entire amoeba creature that we are moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of people, we have a resource material created on people analytics. And if you guys would like to take a look at that, Tommy is going to post that on the chat, and you can download the book and maybe share it with your boss or your team. It has some very useful knowledge that can help improve teams and help with people analytics. So moving on from the topic of people and remote teams, I'd like to hear from Nick about businesses that evolve and how businesses are evolving. I'd like Nick, if you could share. I know when you started your business, there has been a lot of changes in the business models to now what it is now to a franchisee model. So how do businesses change, and how do they evolve successfully?
Yeah, well, I think part of it starts with the communication of how important change is. And I know I said that disruption was a buzzword that I would try to avoid, but it certainly, I think disruption is really a fancy word for evolution, which is also a nicer word for change. And so, we're constantly growing, we're constantly evolving, we're constantly adapting to our circumstances, as well as trying to stay ahead of some certain trends and take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. So for us, it's kind of been something that we've always tried to make sort of ingrained in our culture, is kind of embracing change and embracing chaos and looking at all of those elements as opportunities to grow and evolve. I don't know if everybody's here seen the Simon Sinek Zoom video with his team, where he's talking about sort of the COVID impact and what it is. And he describes it as just another market disruption, not unlike Netflix disrupting Blockbuster or the taxi cabs getting, uprooted by Uber. This one just happened to be more abrupt and also happened to have a health component with it as well. So by having those things, I think by having change sort of ingrained in kind of our values set and sort of our entrepreneurial mantra and mindset, I think we're able to then communicate out to our employees, our franchise owners, when there is something new or something different. I think because also as humans, we have a tendency to be resistant to change or uncomfortable when that happens. And so I think it's upon us as the leader to want to communicate as best we can that stuff that we can control that's change, and then stuff that's out of our control that we have to adapt and evolve as a result. So, you know, for us, when we first started, we were just doing junk removal. And then in the 08, 09 recession, we realized we needed more service offering than just hauling people's stuff away. And so we said, well, look, we've got trucks and labor. Why don't we do moving and junk removal? And so, you know, now today moving is 50% of our, you know, national revenue. And that was something that kind of came out of an economic crisis 12 years ago. And so I think being able to point to also sort of the spotlights and the highlights of positives that have come from changes. You know, I'm looking at my business now and some of the things that we've done and some of the steps we've taken. We're going to be probably better off going forward than we were pre-COVID, just because we weren't forced to face some of the challenges head on, like we all had to adapt and embrace.
Very interesting that you mentioned that most of your like changing points in life were like some in your business, some crisis or the other, and you know it has been positive for you and in the way it forced you to make these changes. So on that note, I have a quick data for you guys. Recent data shows that we vaulted 5 years forward in consumer and business digital adoption in a matter of just 8 weeks, thanks to, you know, the pandemic. So Rob works closely with people who are forcing them to change or realize they need change. So how do successful businesses adapt, and how are they evolving, Rob?
Yeah, I think it's important that customers and businesses and even people know your core. So that comes down, in my opinion, you know who your people are. You know what their skill set is, what their strengths are. You leverage them and you know them. The other is you know what your product is, and that's a well-defined entity. It's a service offering. It's a product. You know what it is. There's a core to it. And the other thing, and Nick and others have mentioned it again, and I'll mention it, it's processes. You need processes as well. Once you have those 3 P's taken care of, then you have the ability to allow yourself to try some innovation. And once you take on innovation, you don't do it at the expense of what you know to be good. But then you take innovation on and then you evaluate it. Will this help one of those 3 things? Will this help my core? Will this grow? Will this shift be positive for the people that I have, or whatever that is? And I think change is inevitable. And part of that inevitability is understanding that you don't want to be changed without a foundation. You've got to have a solid rock to be built upon. Then you can adapt as needed. You can grow in these tumultuous times. And I think that's probably what's most important and what my customers kind of come back to us for.
Very interesting. You brought up these different pillars that you need to have and how you can like stay focused on the goal and still like have change and something huge happening within the organization, like transformation. I know Ken is reimagining how people are using checks. So how do you convince businesses, and how are businesses evolving to this change?
Yeah, so I think, you know, what we have seen is that, you know, there's been, you know, a massive rethinking and mind shift, you know, over the past 3, 4, 5 months just around, physical versus virtual, right? And yeah, everyone was so just kind of entrenched in what they've been doing forever and ever and ever. And as the old saying goes, right, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, suddenly, right, this little virus comes around and it breaks everything, right? Absolutely everything, right, is thrown off kilter, and you have to rethink, what used to work in, a world does not work in bizarro worlds now, right? So when we, take that and, turn it upside down on its head, we've had, to do very little to actually convince people that they need to, get rid of a physical manifestation and move into a purely digital service, because the world just forced it upon them, right? They needed to rethink. And so, from our perspective, we just kind of been sitting here waiting, and hoping that there would be a pandemic so that everyone would realize that our service is fantastic and they need it. And luckily it happened, right? So this is, we're just kind of reaping the benefits of that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Anything you would like to add to that, Brigitte? How are successful businesses adapting to change, and how can we sort of get inspired from that and invite that in our organization?
I think I'd like to reiterate a point that Nick made, that it's a truism in change management that chaos can be a catalyst, and that after you're done immediately reacting and making sure your employees are safe, and that you wouldn't be responsible for your state's numbers going up, that this is an opportunity to take advantage of a necessary shift to digital working environments, and to capitalize on the looseness that comes from a chaos or change moment where we're not entrenched in our previous way of being. So to reiterate that there's some opportunity to be planful before people's habits reharden, and see what benefits could end up coming out of this long term.
Mm-hmm. Sure. We just got a question from one of our attendees. Feel free to jump on this. The question is, what considerations are you making at the corporate level to accommodate staff who may be based internationally or in lower resourced areas of the United States? Anybody on the panel, if you can talk to this question? So you can take a look at the question under Q&A. So Brigitte, so sorry to put you on the spot, because you are the people's person. You could just like generally answer to this on like how businesses should go about this, or are you seeing a trend about something related to this?
I don't have an informed answer, but I would like to say how much I love the question, which is the ultimate like time staller, but I'm not stalling. I'm just admitting that I don't have a smart answer. But when we think about how our businesses show up in the community and act and react to systematic inequality, being able to understand that our employees will not have the same access to bandwidth. Maybe I do have, you said we were allowed to do little plugs, right? Because Cox Communications has something called Connect to Compete, which is a heavily reduced connectivity package for students who need it to maintain their learning environment. I think it's like $10 a month for high-speed internet, so that you can get your schooling done, and which has become amazingly important now that our environments are virtual. So we have something for our customers, but we don't, I'm not sure what the Cox Communications is doing for employees, if that's an issue. I think most of our employees are fortunate enough to have the bandwidth they need for the virtual environment. But again, love the question.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely. I'm so happy to hear that you guys are doing, so much in your own way to help this problem. We have another question from Frank this time. Are any of you using any unique techniques to break down departmental silos while in the remote work environment? Or how are you guys in your organizations breaking down departmental silos?
Yeah, I'll jump on that one for a little bit. It was important for us, I think. I'll also speak to the previous question just a bit, but like Brigitte, I don't know that I have a great answer, but the answer kind of goes in both to me is to understand that in our blended work schedules, asynchronous communication becomes more important and the processes that lean into them. And so instead of us all being together on a call 8 to 5, like we maybe would be in person because we're working in an open office floor and we're just used to having face-to-face time, taking, core business communications to an asynchronous level allows for people that are working in different shifts, allows for different home dynamics. And face it, a lot of us have young kids and they're also doing schooling. And, I have to set up during the remote schooling different little battle stations because I got 3 kids at the house. So it's me and my wife and my kids, and we're all doing remote learning and working, and the schedules are different. So asynchronous communication, I think, is key, making sure that clear objectives are being met, but not necessarily real-time involvement is giving people space for that. In terms of silos, I think shared resources in terms of a knowledge base is a very technically easy thing to implement, but reaps huge rewards when an entire organization can collaborate into a single system that has all the information that you may need or may not need, but that's the one-stop shop for resources. And it can be from company events, announcements, that thing, to deep technical articles or postmortems or anything like that. But it's just a shared resource in which information sits. And for me, that's what I value most.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll chime in on the silo question as well. I mean, as I mentioned, we do a daily huddle, which is all company. It's at 11:11 every day. You don't necessarily have to do a daily huddle. You could do a weekly, but we follows a very tight agenda, no more than 10 minutes. We ask who has good news to share, who has a core value story. Then each day of the week, we actually have a different department head give a quick snippet update of what the focus is for their department that week. Then we have any announcements or opportunities, and then we close with any wow stories or client testimonials. So it's kind of really tight agenda. And like I said, we do it daily, but I think having some sort of, whether it's a monthly all staff, some sort of way to get everybody together on Zoom. You can have some creative, fun ways to make it playful if that's how your culture is, and then have different department heads. We call them business areas, but department heads kind of give a brief. Keyword is brief update on what it is they're working on, and so on and so forth. And we have some other different things throughout the week that the leadership team meets together, and then the leadership heads go and meet with their respective teams to kind of cascade the messages throughout the organization. And then, as Robert mentioned, communications like newsletters or video updates from some of the team leaders, I think, go a long way to also keep people plugged into what everybody's doing. But silos are real and difficult to avoid, even with all those things that I just mentioned.
It's wonderful. It really looks like a great place to remote work at Nick's. Ken, do you have anything to add to this? How do you guys?
Yeah. I just want to piggyback on what Nick and Rob were saying. I think it brought up really good points, right? So we do a daily stand up, right? Teams together, and this is really it's about what problems do I have, right? Do I need help, right? Because just getting status updates, who cares, right? It's a matter of I'm stuck, I need help, right? And communicating that way is having a sync point, but then as Robert was saying, everyone managing the chaos in their own homes, right? You can't have that too long. So it's a matter of identify, I need help from this person. Can we talk later at noon? right? And just getting that so that now you have, the open, clear communication. Asynchronous, I think, is huge, right? And this gets back to the earlier point on boundaries. So this has actually kind of been helpful because I've always been trying to get people to to use the appropriate tool for the appropriate reason, right? And unfortunately, a lot of times, we develop these habits of, I have a hammer, so everything looks like a nail, right? And we have Slack, so the only way that I'm going to communicate with anyone is via Slack. And it's like, no, right? Respect the boundaries, right? Respect the time, right? If our normal workday is 8 to 5, or our normal kind of in-person time is like 10 to 4, and then you have flexibility around that, great. Outside of those hours, put it into an email, right? And then realize that you may not get a response to that email for 12 hours, 14 hours till the stand up the next day, and that's cool, right? That is exactly what we want, right? One is coalesce your thinking, right? Make it succinct, right? And take the burden off of the other person by doing as much thinking as you can ahead of time. It's like, I have this problem. I'm thinking either solution A or solution B. What are your thoughts, right? As much more than help, right? Help is a really, really time wasting raise of your hand, right? But putting in that thought to say, okay, this is where I am stuck. This is what I need, and am I going down the right path, right? I think this is a way to go. Is this the right thing? And the one thing that I want to emphasize, kind of within that, is the quality of language, right? And this goes to one of my favorite quotes from George Carlin, the great sage of our time. So the quality of our thoughts and ideas can only be as good as the quality of our language, right? And so part of that is, I strongly advocate, right, a minimal use of pronouns, right? Right? He did this, it didn't work. Like, okay, we got way too much going on to say they tried something, it didn't work. Right? Way big of a time waster. So if you cannot describe it precisely as to Acme Incorporated tried to do, process number 42, the result was A when we expected it to be B, right? If you can't, coalesce it down into that message, then you're not providing the value that you need to in the chain.
Yeah, I love that, because I think brevity is always important, and now more than ever. I'm not a big fan of emails, so if you're emailing to me, just tell me, like, be like brief and tell me what you want and what's happening. I love that, Ken. Bridget,
Duani, can I? Yeah.
please.
Ken, I was just rehearsing my thought, and then you started talking about language, and I was like, oh, whoa, that's actually a pretty good segue. So now in this environment where we are really missing ways to tighten our social bond, you need to watch your language about the other department. Don't do a them, us kind of thing. Like, watch how you're talking about your peers, especially by email, where you can't like do a little wink or a hint, like facial expression, so you can tell it's a more jocular way of being. So when you use inclusive and exclusive language about the other departments, you're separating yourselves and creating that silo. And as a leader, it's really important to set the tone for your team and not talk about other departments that way. You can create and emphasize a shared identity. You're working on the same goals. You wear the same t-shirts with the same logos. So just to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of an us versus them.
Interesting that you mentioned, I know you're very, you feel strongly about how leadership is so crucial right now. So to all the leaders and managers listening, so how do you think they should be, communicating to their team? What's like the best practice? What's like the do's and don'ts?
Yeah. No, you have to know your team's individual situations, especially how many kids are they right now? Are they chef and gardener and school teacher, or only chef gardener? Like you need to keep track of this for your level so you can help people. So you can keep an eye on who's not taking breaks, on who's going to get burnt out. Watch for the distribution of work as well. You know, to Ken's point earlier, some roles are adapt more easily to the remote environment. And if you've got somebody who's feeling purposeless, who's typically a really engaged contributor, now they're under stress and they're isolated, and you know, they can disconnect pretty easily from the work. So making sure that you're providing those opportunities for motivation, and you know who is going to suffer from the sense of isolation and might need the occasional touch point. One of the things that I recommend that we've seen is like, okay, so if you're trying to do more meetings to keep your social connections going, just try and condense them. So you do want to see somebody, but don't schedule like 8 meetings throughout the day. Focus time is super important. Like Ken software developers, it's better to have like 2-hour chunks of time. So if you're trying to maintain the connection and you already have a 30-minute touch point on the calendar, don't add another one, or take your 15 and add your other 15 and make it a 30, but don't split them up throughout the day. So more of a laundry list than a concise best practice, but there are some really good resources too from Deloitte and Gartner and the think tanks that are putting out some good leadership research. So there's lots of stuff online.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing this with us, Brigitte. Very unique insight. We also have some people in the chat room appreciating your points, and Aaron says Brigitte has fantastic points, and we have people agreeing to you. And also Aaron says we have implemented isolation assessment to gauge support requirements longer term. Very cool. So my next question is to Rob, since you work closely on data and analytics. So how can businesses accelerate their migration to digital technologies? And there's so much awareness now to get digital, to use the data transformation, digital transformation. So how do you scale and speed in every sector or every department in your within an organization?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that your company is probably generating more data than you have any idea that you have. And so part of that process is just to say, okay, well, we know the data that we have, we got databases, data's in it. But more than likely, there's a lot of unstructured data that you can fold in that your company's creating, whether it's in the form of, you know, spreadsheets or on SharePoint or, you know, emails, chats. You can connect all of this stuff, ticket systems, all that can be, you know, aggregated into a common data model that allows you to then do things more smartly. I don't know if that's the right grammar. Nope. But so part of it is just saying, yes, I've got data, and there's more data that I need that's out there that I need to fold in. In addition, there's the potential to fold in data that's outside of your company, whether it's, you know, social media, website analytics. It could be call center data, though that would be what you're generating. But getting and looking outward and trying to see how can there be extraneous data kind of coming in, and how do I capture that? And then sitting back and then analyzing what that data is and what it can mean and what you can glean from it, and embracing it. And so part of it is to say, I have this data, my people and my customers are generating it, and I'd like to leverage it. It's a tool that I can use, and then use it to be smart. And that, you know, that takes some time, that takes some effort, that takes some you know, some skills, and maybe if your company doesn't have experience with business intelligence or data analytics, you know, obviously that's what Pandera does, and then we can help. But your company may already have that internally, and maybe it's just, you know, that shared silo of information or a knowledge base. You know, all of those things can be incorporated, and data we all know this, just like the cloud, data is important in the future. There's not, we can't get away from it. You have to embrace it at some point.
Ken, I know you guys work on a lot of data, and you guys are digital. So how does your organization, or how do organizations scale it across their teams?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna be the first to admit here. We do great with data that we are generating and using on our product, and are horrible at measuring ourselves, tracking ourselves, right? Because we're just trying to we're lean, we're trying to solve customer problems, and so we're so focused externally that we rely on the team and the bond and the vision of what we're doing to kind of carry us through the day. And that's one of the things that right now our stage adding on processes where we're kind of looking back at productivity data and so forth. Just it's not time well spent in our organization, right? And totally different, right, for larger organizations, right, that have more structure to them, right? I think that's incredibly valuable, right? And it's just a matter of the maturation of a company as it grows through its life cycle. What are you doing? How are you optimizing your resources? I guess in a startup world, I fully believe that it's hire good people, set a vision, remind them of the vision, let them go, right? And the proof is really in the pudding, right? It shows up really, really close to the people that embrace the vision, right? That love doing it, that love working together, and those that don't. And so I do this a lot more by gut feel than by quantitative numbers right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Interesting, and I'd like to see how that changes for other organizations also. When they look at decisions based on gut feeling versus using extensively their data to make these decisions. But we're just 2 minutes away. I think it's fair to say that the current climate has brought about changes in business models, about new ways of networking, new ways of working with your teams, has brought a digital culture awareness and mindset among organizations. So the current situation has potential to remain mainstream, and the challenge here on is how do we keep up with the productivity, and how do we make this even better? So I want closing comments from all of you on what the next trends are going to be. And if there is something that you want our attendees to take away from you on change adoption. So Nick, can we start with you?
Sure. So, I mean, we surveyed our team, and they all feel, I would say close to 90% feel that they are more productive in the current decentralized structure and would prefer to keep a sort of remote first business model going forward, even, once COVID completely is out of the equation, or if it's ever out of the equation. And so we're kind of moving forward with that mindset. I do think some of the things that have been talked about today are critical, the isolation assessment, things that, ways to try to make sure that you can still have the water cooler aha moment or whiteboard moment, even not being physically there. And how do we do that? How do we sort of make that magic still occur? So I don't have all those answers yet, because I think right now we're still sort of in this new phase of, we've adjusted, but now what is that sort of, reality going forward long term? But I do think that we are going to be remote first, both for our call center as well as our franchise teams. We've been doing even, remote sales with our franchise sales approach as well. So, to the extent that everybody seems to adapt and adopt and embrace it, I think that's going to be our path forward.
Love it. Amazing, Nick. Love how you are embracing this change, and how you are bringing in so much more to your teams. And I love hearing how you're supporting your teams at a time like this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I mean, obviously, some people on the call might be wondering, like, wait a minute, I thought he had a moving and junk removal company. How are you moving and hauling people's stuff remotely? So when I'm, the teams I'm referring to, of course, is our back office franchise support and call center, right? We don't have the robots yet moving people's stuff, but even for our field staff, which is, the frontline labor, taking an approach of safety first, taking an approach of making sure that we create a safe environment for our team and then ultimately our clients, and having that be sort of an extension of how we conduct ourselves. I think it has to continue to permeate, going forward also.
Thank you. I love that. Ken, closing comments, and what are the next big trends to watch out for?
Yeah, so I don't think that there's like a big trend. I think it's a continuation of this evolution, right, and one towards, I guess, embracing flexibility is the way that I would term it. Who knows, how long we're going to be in this lockdown situation. Who knows?
When people say when the pandemic ends, it's sounding more like when I win the lotto. Like, we were all saying August we'll all be back and things are going to change, and look at us.
Right. And even when that goes, there are ripples and ripples and ripples, right? So one of the things that we look at, we do have in our company, a lot of parents, right? So it's not just when the state of California says, okay, you can go back to work. It's when do the schools say that the kids can go back to school, right? Now that's going to really govern how I run my business, right? Is someone in a school board somewhere, is dictating it. So I think this paradigm of flexibility, adaptability, and I guess an honest assessment, right? Looking every individual and the organization looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, okay, I'm not going to contribute the same way that I did before, right? I'm going to contribute in a different way. And there's going to be some pros and there's going to be some cons to that, right? And I like to, right? It's an adult conversation. Right? It's like, hey, in my current environment, I'm juggling a couple of kids who have to be on Zoom calls here and there, and then I need to make lunch for them. So is there a different way or a different expectation that we can set about how I'm going to interact with the rest of the team, how I'm going to contribute to the product, all of those things. I think the nice thing here is that it really brings it to the forefront, right? You start having these conversations during interviews instead of 6 months on the job, right? And then trying to adjust and scamper to cover that. So I think that's what's going to be healthy, is right, having adult conversations earlier in the relationship.
Yeah. So there is no like one size fits all. It's very fluid, and so that's something organizations should think of in terms of how work is going to be. So Rob, closing comments on change adoption, and what do you think the next big trends are going to be?
Yeah, I mean, again, underlining what everybody else has already said, and things are still settling down, if that's even going to happen. I think it's, for me, the most important thing to understand is we're people helping people. At the end of the day, our companies and our communities and our organizations really are an extension in some way of a group of people helping another group of people accomplish a thing better. And that's at the core of what it is to be human here. And so for me, it's empathy. This environment, this change has made me more empathetic to my coworkers, my customers, my boss and my own family, and how is it that I can work with them better, more efficiently, help them accomplish their goals, because their goals are really just helping those that are helping others. And so to me, that's what I want to walk away from.
Great. Support goals, each other's goals. I mean, we need all the support we can get now. Brigitte, your closing comments?
Yeah. To echo my fellow panelists, we started this thinking it was going to be a sprint. It is a marathon. And so now I think we're in a spot where it's time to start doing our mid review. We let fall by the wayside because you didn't think you have to keep it up. How do you resource appropriately so you can go back to greatness? What do you drop because it's not working, not efficient, no longer necessary? And how do you celebrate everything for the long haul? So start celebrating some milestones now and bolster spirits and keep on going.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely. I loved how all of you ended this panel. Thank you very much for bringing your thoughts and insights on how organizations right now require innovation, for talking about building a cohesive team, and for putting the focus on leadership and how everything right now needs to be reimagined. We're coming back stronger. So it's now time to focus on recovering revenue, rebuilding operations, and just rethinking and reimagining everything for your teams and your organization. Thank you once again, guys, all of you for joining us, Brigitte, Ken, Nick, and Robert. And thank you to our attendees for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed our edition of change adoption. You can follow all of us or send us a connection request on LinkedIn. You've already met and spoken to us. So please also, if you'd like to join our Tech and Beer Slack group, I'm sure you can find it on, you'll find us on LinkedIn and find your way. Thank you very much. And we will see you all in 2 weeks' time in another edition of Community Connect. Thanks, guys, once again. Ken,
Thank you so much.
Rob.
Thanks, everybody. Good job, everybody. Thank
Have
you.
a great night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.